So, hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you had a good short break because the next session will definitely keep you hooked to the screen. I'm very happy that we have Emanuele with us today, and he's going to show us things about GitHub Codespaces. So, thank you, Emanuele. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin. Thank you very much. So, yes, today we talk about, how to say, one of my favorite topic in the last years, honestly. And the topic is GitHub Codespaces. I like very much because at the beginning, I was in the beta of GitHub Codespaces, and I enjoy the new user experience if you have to create a new environment for a new project, or you have to use an old library that is not supported, for example, or Windows 10 or Windows 11 or stuff like that. And I really enjoy to work every day with GitHub Codespaces. So let's see in a nutshell, but not only in a nutshell, how it works. And but first of all, and I want to show you, and I want to tell you what is GitHub Codespaces. GitHub Codespaces, first of all, is a development environment accessible from anywhere. So you can access from a browser, for example. So it's accessible from anywhere for this reason, because if you have a browser, you can access to your development environment. And you can develop, of course, from a mobile phone, from an iPad, or from a Chromebook. And a Chromebook, I think, is the perfect use case, because you cannot install anything on a Chromebook because you have just a browser. But you can develop from a Chromebook, for example, with the full experience of VS Code as well. So this is important because you can have your extension, your workspace settings, and stuff like that, but in a browser. But later we can see how we can use also Visual Studio Code with Codespaces. And of course, you reduce the configuration time because you can grab your settings from a Codespaces to another. And if you want to reproduce the same environment for, let's say, another developer in your team, because he is new on the team and stuff like that, you don't have to install anything on his machine, but you can use directly the configuration file from Codespaces. But let's see together later how it works as well. And another most important feature of GitHub Codespaces is you don't have anything about the source locally. So it means your intellectual property is not on your machine, but is on the cloud. So if someone stole your laptop, or and your laptop is broken in the morning, for example, and you can have the access to the source code from GitHub directly with all of your environment settings inside. So this is very important for me, and I think it's one of the best features for GitHub Codespaces. And but what you can do with Codespaces? First of all, every developer can create his own Codespaces. So every developer has the private Codespaces, and he can install NuGet package, npm package, and stuff like that. And he is the owner of his container. So later you understand why I call it container. And no one can access to your Codespaces. So Codespaces is private. You can access only to your Codespaces, and you cannot how to say, join or share a Codespaces with someone else. So you are the responsible of your Codespaces. And each Codespaces can be associated to a project itself or a branch. So you can create a different branch with different Codespaces, for example. And also this is important because, for example, I work every day with SharePoint framework, and every SharePoint framework, or at least in the last years not, but in the past, every SharePoint framework needs a different version of Node.js, for example. And with Codespaces, you can have different Codespaces configured with different Node version installed. So you can switch in the same project, for example, in different range, but with different settings behind you, like the Node version, the SharePoint framework version, and stuff like that. Also, this is important if you want to develop a long period product, for example, and you want to maintain a Node version of your product. But you can do the same on not only with Node, but also with .NET, of course. And you can work directly online if you want. So you can open a browser and start to work directly from the browser. But if you want, you can also work from Visual Studio Code if you want. Maybe because you prefer to work in a rich environment like Visual Studio Code, because you have the same settings on the browser, but you're still in a browser. So if you prefer to work on Visual Studio Code, you can do it, and it's very simple. There is an extension for Visual Studio 2022 and Visual Studio 2019, but it is still in preview, and I don't recommend to use Codespaces from Visual Studio, but it's preferable to use Visual Studio Code. Okay, and of course I prefer Visual Studio Code as well as my environment every day, but it's just my personal opinion. And you can configure your container as you want. So you can install different framework. You can remove Node and install only, for example, .NET or PowerShell or stuff like that. And for example, I use Codespaces also for contributing to different open source projects on GitHub, because I don't want to download gigabyte and gigabyte of source code on my machine just to add a small feature or make a translation or stuff like that. So I create a new Codespaces, I configure everything, and I start to contribute to online source code. Now Codespaces is out of the beta, but if you were in the beta, you can still use the old version of the beta. So this is important because you don't lose anything about Codespaces if you switch from the beta to the general availability. During beta, it's recommended to use Chrome or a Chromium browsers like Edge, Chrome, and Opera, but I try to use it also on my Mac with Safari, and it works very well. So you don't have this limit anymore, honestly. At the moment, during the beta, and if you were in the beta and you don't create an organization, you can have only one type of Codespaces. So, I mean, with one type, let's see later what it does mean. And at the moment, also in the GA, only Linux containers are available at the moment. So it's not really a problem because .NET is supported also on Linux, maybe better than Windows, is more faster, of course. But you have also only 3 Codespaces for user. So, but if you have a Pro account with the beta, a GitHub Pro account with the beta, you can use how many Codespaces do you want. But first of all, it's not on the slide. I forgot to add it. But the Codespaces is available only in the organization account and not in your private account. So you need to create a new organization, join the organization, and activate Codespaces directly on the organization and not on your personal account. This is important as well to know it. Okay, but is it free? Of course not, because GitHub is a company and want to earn money like Microsoft or Google or Meta, not Facebook, but Meta. But you can configure your Codespaces with your own power. Like, for example, you can configure a Codespaces with 2 cores and or 4 core. For example, 2 cores, it seems not so much to develop stuff. But remember, you use only the container to write the code and run the background task. So you don't need a real power of, like a video card or stuff like that. So the 2 cores are only used just for your container. And for a middle-sized project, small middle-sized project, 2 cores is enough, honestly. And if you work, for example, I try to do a kind of calculation at the bottom of the slides. If you work for 8 hours for 20 days, you can spend only $14 each month if you want to use Codespaces. And if you use, for example, a full core, it's a double. It's almost $30. It's not so much, because if you want to buy a new machine to develop something, you spend more in 1 year, for example. But you can also use a 32 core Codespaces. It's up to you, but it's a little bit expensive. And you can also pay the storage about Codespaces. So if you have source code with 3 GB of text, okay, you spend $0.07 each month. It's not too much, but you have to know it. Okay. So we can start to use Codespaces in our browser. Let's see if I can share. Okay. So I am on my GitHub account in this moment, and I want to create a new repo, for example, Austrian event 2022. And, oops, I create a new repo here, sorry. And I start to create a new repo here with a description. It's public. I want to add a README file, a git ignore like node, for example. So this is just an example. You can configure the repo as you want. I don't want the license. When I click on create repository, it starts to create my repository, as always. But here, if you have Codespaces activated on your account, you have a new tab here. You have the local tab if you want to clone the repo directly on your machine. But if you want to work with Codespaces, you can go here, click on the Codespaces, and click on new Codespaces. This is why you don't have any Codespaces on this repo, because of course this is new. So if I click here on new Codespaces, and the browser redirects me directly on this page, and it starts to build a new Codespaces. And after 30 seconds maximum, more or less, it created my new environment with everything installed. And with everything, I mean everything, because let me zoom a little bit here. And you have, in this container, you have Node.js, Python, Docker, and they forgot to mention .NET, because you have .NET as well, list SDKs, if I remember correctly. Okay, and you have also .NET. You have, I don't have this one. Okay, you have the version, all the stable version of .NET, but you can add as many SDK you want on the Codespaces. So I forgot to tell you at the beginning of the session, if you have questions, stuff like that, you can directly ask the question during the session and not in the end, but it's up to you. So yes, from here I can start to use Codespaces. And if you are familiar with Visual Studio Code, as you can see, it's almost the same. Not almost, it's the same. And for example, here I sync my settings with GitHub, And if I start to share my settings, to seek my settings, after a little bit replace local, for example, okay, I have the same settings that I have on my machine. And you can also set these settings by default. Okay, so I have this kind of new, and you start to install extensions. You start to sync the settings about the font size and stuff like that. The theme of Visual Studio Code, I use this theme. For example, the default one, dark, and oops, you try to reconnect because he installed a lot of extension maybe, so it needs to restart. But it's not happen. It's happened only the first time. I don't want stateful at the moment. So if as you can see, maybe I could try to. No, 125 is okay. And of course, I can go here and change the settings from here. For example, I can change my theme color theme, and I can use one maybe is better light, so you see much better, I think. And then you can open the terminal, create new terminal here from here directly, and you can start to create a new application. For example, npx create react app dot. So we create a new React app directly on the root of the project. Okay. And now if I switch, so it's my fault. Create a new project because I create the repository with capital letter, and create React app need to a path the project folder without capitals. So this is why I have that error. And after a while, you start to add, say here, the source code. And of course, also for installing an npm package or NuGet package is more faster than your machine because you are just in the cloud. So you have a lot of full throttle bandwidth, of course, instead of your machine. So this is an app, and of course, you need to be connected during your daily work because you use the online version. Also, if you use Codespaces from Visual Studio Code, you need to be connected to internet, of course, because you have you have to connect directly to Codespaces. It's almost finished. But in the meantime, here, as you can see, not here, but let's see later. Come on, it's almost finished. I want to show you something else. Come on, you got it. Okay, now it's finished. And if you go here on your source code, you can come here and say, this is the default React project, okay, template. And here I can start my application, for example, npm start, gd, the project, npm start, and it start my application. But wait a moment, because I am online, and how it works with the localhost, stuff like that. It direct me directly to another link with the name of your username on GitHub and the name of your Codespaces name. It's like the repo name and a kind of random string and your port, and also GitHub preview.dev. And this link is accessible only by you. Also, if you share this link with another guy in your team with a normal GitHub account, it's not accessible. It's accessible only from your account. Okay. So also this is important to know it. But how it works behind the scene? Behind the scene, when you start a new port like npm start or stuff like that, he listens all the port that you open, and he start to add port to the process. Visibility is private, for example, auto forwarded, because you can configure also a manual port like 5000, and you can grab also here a running process, and you can switch from private to visibility. No, and you cannot switch to the public at the moment because it's only private. Maybe in the future they open these kind of settings, but at the moment it's only private. And if I start to do from OCR, and I click on save, I don't know why now it doesn't. Okay, this one. And the preview is a live preview, so if you change something on your code, you start to update the application as well, of course, like every React React project. Your local project is the same, okay? And also this is important, I think. Let me, okay. And now you want to switch, for example, to the online version of Codespaces to Visual Studio Code. And how is possible? You can go directly here on this menu, and here, as you can see, you see these two entries in the menu: Open in VS Code and Open VS Code Insider. And I try to open this one on Visual Studio Code. Start to open a new window. Let me close the OK. Good. And as you can see, he switched my my team to the light team because I changed my settings directly on Codespaces. And if I go here directly on the app.js, you have, I'll try to zoom a little bit. Okay, you have here the same changes on the file, but as you can see, I didn't download anything or clone anything on my machine because I use Codespaces, so I use the online version of the source code. And if I come back on the browser, sorry, no, this is not the browser, this is just the code. I lost my browser. Okay, I go here on the app file, transfer, and Switzerland, because I'm from Switzerland, and I click save. Okay, what is Visual Studio Code? Here. I don't have to refresh anything, or I cannot do a commit or stuff like that, because it's just sync. When you try to save a file, it just sync it with my local version of Visual Studio Code. And in order to do that, you need to have where is the extension? An extension called remote. I don't Codespaces. Let me check. I don't remember every time. Codespaces, GitHub Codespaces. Okay, you need to install this extension before, and if you launch the repo directly from the browser, you have how to say you have to install this. He asked you to install this extension before. You have to log it in on GitHub, and it's done. And here, as you can see in the bottom here, you have this Codespaces icon. This means you are connected to Codespaces, okay? And when you are connected to Codespaces and you have the extension installed on your machine, you have a new icon here on the right. If you use the sidebar on the right, like me, because I used to work with Visual Studio, and I like to have a sidebar on the right. If you click here, you see a little bit information about your Codespaces. For example, here, as you can see, I have the repo name. this is the name of your Codespaces. It's a random name. This is the branch where you're working on, and we have the information also about the Codespaces as well. So you have 4 core, 8 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of storage. And also this information is important. Idle timeout. It means if I don't use Codespaces because a colleague called me on Teams, or I have a meeting for 2 hours with my bosses, for example, after 30 minutes, without using Codespaces, it shut down directly your instance of Codespaces. And of course, this is important just because you spend less money, because during the day, maybe you don't work 8 hours on Visual Studio Code. So if you use during the day, during the 8 hours of working, only 4 hours Visual Studio Code, you pay only for 4 hours. And of course, you pay the space, because the space is allocated. But if you work only for 8 hours, or for 6 hours, or 4 hours each day of Visual Studio Code, you pay only for that time. So this is important. And here we have also an information about when this Codespaces is created as well. So I think that's all here from here. And if I come back on my browser, maybe here, yes, and I stop the application, and I come back to Visual Studio Code, I can, of course, start again a new session of npm start directly from here. Oh, should be new project, sorry. Now I have to move everything. And npm start again. We start a new session as well. But of course, let's see the magic. This is a real magic, because it doesn't use the public link as before, because you are on your machine, but he use your localhost name, but he use only this link and not the if you try to switch to localhost instead of the IP or the name of your machine, it doesn't work. So I think we have a problem. React app. Okay, so it's the same as the online, but you can work directly from your machine. So the experience is like you are in the real machine, as not with Codespaces. And if I change something and I try to do a comment first comment, as always during our life in GitHub. Okay, now if I come back to the browser and I come back to the repo again, go to repository. As you can see, I don't see the commit here, because the commit is committed, but you have to follow the same workflow as your workflow during the day, because you have to sync the settings and stuff like that. And remember, if you do a commit like me in this session, but I don't sync the changes, the commit is on my container, and if I don't commit and I don't sync the commit, and I destroy the Codespaces, the container, I lost everything. So this is important to click on sync, or you can configure your Studio Code to sync automatically after a commit. It's up to you. Okay, first commit, it works. So we are very happy now. And of course, I can also reopen again my Codespaces as well on GitHub. And yeah, I want to move this file, if I can. Oh, we copy everything here. So let me create a new repo with another name. Overview, new Austrian dev day. Public as readme, git ignore, note, create a repository. So we create a new one, and we add the Codespaces here as well, new Codespaces. But in the meantime, I want to show you how you can, I'll say, how many Codespaces I have on my account. So you can grab your GitHub, github.com here. Go here, Codespaces, and here in this page, you see all your Civil Fortnite. Cool. And here you can see all the Codespaces that runs on your account, and you can go here, for example, and delete or change machine type. Now, in this moment, I have only this 4 core because I still in the beta at the moment. And also you can have this, you can export the changes to the branch. So if you want to duplicate your container in another branch, you can go here, export change to the branch, and he exports your container directly in another branch. Okay. So also this one is important. And if you want, you can also open directly Codespaces in a browser, or just to code directly from here. For example, I want to delete this one because I cannot use it anymore. So I deleted Codespaces. And here, as you can see, maybe here, you have a small icon. Maybe I try to zoom a little bit here. You have a small icon, and it means your Codespaces has some changes on the code, on the source code. So remember to don't delete everything before your first commit, okay, or at least the sync, not the commit. Okay, I try to open this one, maybe here. Okay, so npx create react app dot, maybe it works now, maybe. Oh, maybe. Oh, it's okay. It started. So the experience is more like that if you want to work with the Codespaces. But we can see how to configure the dev container in a nutshell during the installation. So you can configure your Codespaces as you want, because by default a container has a lot of libraries and framework, and maybe you don't use it in the same project. He has Python, Node, JavaScript, TypeScript, C++, Java, C#, F#, .NET Core, PHP, PowerShell, and many more. And maybe you need only C#, for example. Or you can configure also the settings of the default extension that you want on your code. For example, if you use Codespaces for a SharePoint framework, maybe you need extension for a SharePoint framework. But if you work on a .NET, not a project, you don't need it. You don't need them. So what you can do is you can go directly in the section of extensions of your dev container file, and you can add the extension, and that extensions are alive only in that container. So he had the extension directly on Visual Studio Code, but are not synced with your account. So that extension are available only on that workspaces. So it's it seems like a small feature, but it's very powerful. I mean, but how can configure my container? I can go directly here. I click Ctrl-Shift-P, or I can click here, and you can add a container configuration file directly from Visual Studio Code, or you can create it also manually. Okay. If I click here, it starts to ask me a lot of questions, like for example, it tried to it tried to ask me if I want Node or Debian, Ubuntu, or stuff like that, because it's a kind of basic configuration. I want to start with an Ubuntu focal, and I want to install on this container .NET CLI. This is the feature that you can add, and the GitHub CLI, and Azure CLI, and Node.js and PowerShell, because in my project I use all this stuff. And because I choose .NET CLI, he asked me if I want to use the latest version of the CLI or a specific version. I choose this one. Also for Node.js is the same, and for PowerShell as well. And after a moment, he created a new container file in a folder called .dev container, like every project on GitHub, like GitHub Action and stuff like that. And the special folders starts with a dot, okay, in the name. And here you can configure your dev container file, and you can see I choose here in the feature. I have give me a moment. I try to zoom a little bit. Okay, and here, as you can see, you have the feature that you want on your container. Okay, so it's very easy if you use Visual Studio Code. At the beginning, you didn't have this feature for creating a dev container file directly from here. So you have to be manually. And here, as you remember, I have a forward port in my application, and you can configure also the default port manually, for example, like this. Okay. And you can also have a specific setting for your container. For example, the font family, the font size is not 14, but 32. Okay. And if I now recreate my container, rebuild container. Yes. You try to rebuild my container, and if I do everything correct, I don't know that because it's not easy during the live to do the correct settings. Cleaning up, because I changed a lot of stuff. So he deleted the old one and started to create a new one. Wait a moment. So building container. So it's more, how to say, it's a little bit more slowly than before, because before we use the default image and they have their image up and running, and I think it's just a matter of time to copy the old one and then the default one to the new one. But here I choose a kind of private codespaces, so it needs time to recreate from scratch, but only the first time, because if I access again to this one, it's very fast. But of course, if you start to customize your container, it needs more time. So come on, boom, boom, boom. Maybe I choose too much package and feature on our environment. Come on, check some Node. I think it's almost finished. Sorry for this waste time, but we are at the end. Come on. And maybe after that it doesn't work, so it's perfect. Come on. Codespace. Codespaces. Come on. Package Ubuntu focal. Okay, PowerShell maybe is real in the at the end. I don't know, but maybe I can stop it if it takes more time. And if you have questions in the meantime, you can start to ask me on the chat directly. Maybe I can stop it. Come on, exporting layers. Export to image. Maybe it's almost finished because he exported the image directly to Codespaces now. So it doesn't matter. Let's see if start or no. Run Docker. Container build. Maybe we are at the end. Okay, so as you can see, the font size, it works because we have a lot of bigger size font at the end. And if I, no, sorry, I don't want to print the page. I want to open a new terminal here, and I want to list my .NET list SDKs. So I have only, for example, .NET 6 because I choose before only .NET 6. So it works. Now we are very at the end. I want to show you also Copilot, but we don't have too much time. But if you are interested to Copilot, you can search online or directly on the official documentation. But Copilot is another cool feature that you can use also on Codespaces, where you can write code without writing a code, but you can write, for example, a comment, and it starts to build your code for you. Okay. Let's have the demo. Here you can find a lot of references about what I talked about today for Codespaces, for the dev container reference, and here there are my links for everything. And but if you are lazy, you can go directly on links.emanuelebartolesi.com, and you can find all that links directly without go through to every link in the page. So remember, links.emanuelebartolesi.com. So thank you very much for attending my session. I hope you are more curious about Codespaces and you start to to use Codespaces from tomorrow. I hope it. I really hope it. So thank you very much. If you have questions, I'm here.
Okay, then thank you very much, Emanuele. That was a very detailed session. I was happy to have seen it. And
yes,
so if you have any questions, go and see.
It's not easy to talk about Codespaces.
Yeah.
But you need, or at least you can talk about Codespaces in 40 minutes or in one day. You can, it's a kind of the topic. Okay.
So if you're watching, if you have any more questions, do write it in the comments, or I think you can contact Emanuele directly as well, either through Hopin or a meeting platform, or through one of the links you provided. Do check out the samples, and the next session will begin at the top of the hour about data spaces. So thank you very much, Emanuele, and everyone else. See you in a bit.
Yep. Ciao.